said it will lower prices and get more foreign competition in, but did what to the tariffs? And so, regardless of what you thought might be the best policy, they promised something and then absolutely totally misled the public. Assuming that the people would not know, that they could slip it through. And this can happen a lot because it's really hard to pay attention to the details. But by 1890, this is where we get the Omaha Convention. And so, I don't think we talked about this at all, did we?
No.
I just put this up there, the Omaha Convention, 1892, where the populists will lay out a platform. And we have to go into a little detail because this is different than what the basic Republican or Democratic Party were doing. But first off, it is the opposite of social Darwinism. At least on the surface, there were a lot of racists in the populists. You remember they're anti-immigrant and they're anti-what? Yeah, very anti-Semitic, anti-urban. You know, there's some closed-minded views in there that relate to it, but they are anti-social Darwinistic. They do not believe that just a few people deserve to be on top, and they do not believe that aiding those who are not wealthy is immoral. And so, under social Darwinism, if you have somebody who's poor, what are you doing? If you believe in social Darwinism, what are they going to do with it if you give them money or higher wages? What's that, Alex? They'll waste it. They're so immoral, they're so flawed that they'll just go get drunk or, you know, wasted on things. So why help them? The populists believe, no, people are not inherently immoral if they're poor, or for that matter, somehow morally superior if they're wealthy. It's much more complex. And so they believe in the concept of an opposite of social morality. That economics is actually a moral issue. And the rights of the whole community must take precedent than the rights of property, than a few property owners that have the majority of property. Remember, I've already showed you about how capitalism tends to focus the wealth on top, which is part of the issue. You know, they get the profit, but they also take the risk. But their point of view is it is not immoral to make sure that all people have some kind of benefits from society. This is a pretty radical shift. And so I'll lay out some of their ideas. Not all of them, some of the basic ideas. Here's a voter deciding between the Republicans, the Democrats, or the People's Party. You know, what they say there is kind of funny. And so first thing, short story. Inflation. They wanted a easy money. Excuse me. They wanted, excuse me, either to print more currency or to make it easier to coin and mint silver. So like the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act, they should be minting all of that silver instead of putting it in the basements of the Treasury. And that's where you get the term free silver. Free coinage of silver. Next. They're intensely anti-bank. They saw the banks, not only nobody likes who you owe money, you know, the person who you owe money to, but also they saw banks as these machines to get people into debt and to encourage speculation. You know, take people's money and speculate to get rich. And so what they wanted were more, they either called the sub-treasury system, or one that they really pushed were banks, postal banks. So every post office can be a bank to this day. They can do all the functions of a commercial bank. Banks can issue checks, because you can go get a money order from a bank. It's a check. Banks can actually have savings. Banks can also loan money. All they have to do today is just change the administrative rules, and every post office could be a bank. And so banks have these functions because, especially back then, it could be a way to move money around that was hard to do for pre-computer and that kind of stuff. And so banks would be a place where farmers and working people could put their money, have a checking account, save money, borrow small like home or car loans like a commercial bank, and not have their savings be put at risk because of speculation, because of banks trying to get rich. This was proposed, they actually seriously talked about it in the Treasury Department during the Obama administration to bring it back. Postal banks. There's a lot of areas, especially poor areas of big cities, there's no banks. There's no banks at all there. I know it's weird in Helen, it doesn't seem like there's banks on every corner.
It's like every 5 blocks.
But in big cities, their whole neighborhoods, areas, were no banks. And think about how hard it would be to save money, to put money aside, to think your money is secure if there's no safe bank. Except for things like, payday loans, those kind of things. And so they talked about it, but it was bandied about in 2016, but it won't happen now. But it's interesting how they're talking about that again. Next, but basically we're talking about more control of banks. But some industries are so important, so vital for the survival of a modern people. They said the government could control, maybe even own some key industries. Most importantly, I think you can see this, you're thinking farmers, railroads. The ICC isn't doing it. And they'll always take advantage of their monopoly power. But also, think about the communications, how important that would be. So they're pretty clairvoyant, but especially, I meant to put electricity, but I guess I got tired. So electric, break. Brand new. So they're looking ahead at how, if there's a monopoly of electricity, how this could radically change things. A monopoly that's not controlled. If it's a monopoly not controlled, why would an electrical utility ever go to a small town? It'd be more expensive to put the cables down than to actually have electricity. Why would they ever go to a farm? It's too expensive. Why would they go to poor areas of town? It's too expensive. They didn't go. Electric utilities don't go to farms because they want to. They were made to by government regulation in the 1930s. And what would electric utilities do if they had a monopoly and, let's say, winter? Jack them way high. Think about it, days are shorter, you need more electricity. Make it 20 times more. And that's what they were doing in the 1920s. And so they were actually pretty clairvoyant of the problems of something like that. It's pretty heavily regulated, even though electric rates do up a little bit in the winter, but not as much as they could in the winter. That's just some example. By the way, doesn't this kind of sound like something? The populists, their view was, if we don't do some, I jumped the gun. Let's act like I never said that. We'll forget Thursday anyways. So, with that, they also wanted the direct election of senators. Senators were, remember the Constitution, senators are chosen by state assemblies. And that's why they called the Senate the Millionaires Club. And that's why legislation that would help people, the saying was it always die in the Senate. It would die in the Senate. And so, Montana was the classic example. I think I mentioned this before in here, didn't I? William Clark, when the copper baron, you hand out the $1,000 checks to all the members of the brand new Montana state legislature, and guess what happened? They made the best decision for the people of Montana. Actually, even for the Senate, which was known for bribery, that was too outlandish, and they wouldn't let him be seated. So Montana would actually become like the poster child of how big money was dominating politics. Kind of weird to think about Montana, especially a new state, not many people living here. This is what happened in 1913. So the point is, this is what they wanted. And yes, you still get people to this day saying we should go back to the old way. All the time, actually.
Well, the people
Also, a progressive income tax. An income tax is a tax on money you make, even though there's different types of income. We're not going to get all just the basic income. And an income tax, it's more than just collecting money. Taxes have great incentive value to incentivize certain behavior. The Constitution does not say there can be an income tax. Well, of course it didn't, because it's free capitalism and free wage system. It's 1787. It's not the same economic system. But still, they wanted a constitutional amendment. Say, okay, you can tax income. And progressive would be a big difference, because all this income was not taxed at all back then. Progressive means as income goes up, what happens to tax rates? Go up. And what they wanted were like 35 30 to 35 different rates. And most people would pay relatively low, but near the top you get a lot of rates. And the whole idea was, well, a few reasons. First off, the founding fathers were terrified of an aristocracy. You know, that's why we can't have titles of nobility, those kind of things. Well, the big money was becoming like an aristocracy. You know, they passed the wealth on to generations, and now you have this wealthy for generation after generation. And not that it's bad to pass on your wealth, but almost pass on like this, like now you passed on this new nobility of wealth. And capitalism, most of the wealth does focus on top. The profits go on top, they take the risk. And this is the way, okay, you get all the benefits from capitalism, not all, but many of them, this would equalize it. Okay, but then you got to pay a little bit for this great system that you're getting rich from. But the other reason is even more important. Taxes work as an incentive. In fact, that's why taxes are important. It's not raising money. We print the money, so that's not a big deal. It's incentives. If you have a bunch of higher and higher tax rates at the very top of income, so we're talking about the very tip top, pay higher and higher taxes, that changes what they do with their money dramatically. Dramatically. If it's really high on top, are they going to pay themselves a big salary? Because they have to pay a big tax. So what would they do with that money instead? Think about it. I own a company, I make all this money, if I pay myself, it's all taxed. Well, there's ways around it. But the big incentive is, it's an incentive. Rather than pay me, I reinvest it in the company. Higher on top means reinvestment in the company. Research and development, higher productivity, and that drips down to higher wages for most workers. The time of the greatest wage growth in American history and productivity, and workers produced more, was the golden age, 47 to 73, 1947. Anybody know the highest marginal income tax rate for most of that time? 91%. Nobody paid actually 91%, it's more complex than that, but still, the highest marginal income tax rate was 91%. And that was the highest wage growth for most Americans. That is the only time in history during those years that the gap between the rich and the poor shrunk. The rich got significantly richer, but the bottom got even more wealth. And so progressive income taxes have the effect of equalizing wealth. It's an incentive. Because think about it, you cut that lower tax rate, won't that be incentive just to pay yourself more? And if you pay yourself more, sure you might spend it, but if you already have a lot, what are you going to do with the money? Save it, buy that gold gilded toilet seat, I always come back to that. Yes, I'm obviously thinking I need one. But what else? You know, you can start your fire with it, you can bury the money in jars in the backyard, you can speculate. There's an incentive to keep the money if the tax rates are low. If the tax rates are low. So this is a big incentive thing. Taxes are a major incentive. Major. It's kind of a big deal. I'm not kidding about that. It's not to raise money. It's incentives. We print the money. Not we. Don't you print the money. Let's print it. No. Make sure. That would be kind of bad if I'm announcing everybody my counterfeiting ring. They made me do it. And lastly, a secret ballot. Secret ballot. So you could vote in private. Not only were political machines roughing people up, but bosses would stand there and watch you vote. And it would be like, hey, are you sure you want to make that vote? Sure. Are you sure? I hate to see you lose your job. Kick out of your house. Oh, no, vote that way, you're fine. 1896 was famous for literally bosses just standing over. Sure. Sure you don't want that? Sure. So a secret ballot would be a big deal to open up elections. And so, they also were pro-union, a few other things, but these are the biggies. And here's the issue. When they look at it, they don't see it as immoral. as helping people on the bottom. In fact, they see it as, if we don't do this, there will be revolution. They look at it as, this is the only way we can save capitalism. Let's save the best elements of capitalism with some elements of socialism in there. There are elements of socialism, but it's to save capitalism. Now, you can make the argument that's a good system or bad system, but their goal was to save capitalism. But by the way, if you want to attack this, what would you call them? But socialists aren't scary. Communists aren't scary.
Anarchists.
Anarchists. You're a bunch of bomb-throwing anarchists. In fact, they just blew up the Tsar of Russia. Right before this, they rolled a bomb under the Tsar's carriage and blew him in half. There were anarchist assassinations all over Europe, and some in the US were coming to a president being killed by an anarchist. So, you didn't know about the Tsar getting blown up in half?
No.
So in 1892, yeah, literally, cut in half, blown in half. He lived for like 2 hours.
Oh my God. Wow. That's that one.
Blown up.
Oh, I was.
No, not like this. I'm not laughing. That's when we got blown up. But yeah, I meant like right here. That's way.
I was like, that one failed it.
Yeah, because
And he told his men, look after the soldiers that were wounded too. Ended reforms in Russia.
They're hard.
But 1892 then, a big election involving snakes. Harrison's running again, the Republican. Cleveland's going to run. He's coming back for a 3rd time, and he wanted a 4th. But both of them are laissez-faire. Cleveland hinted, but they're still basically laissez-faire economics. By the way, you like the monopoly snake? I like this one with the tentacles around the Capitol.
I think all the
I'm in
snakes-
octopus
that's
mode.
still
I'm
the
in-
snake.
Read the manual. Snakes are complex.
Well, let's say that.
that's what I was.
No, what are you talking about?
At the bottom, doesn't it say?
Oh, it's pop. Yes.
At the top too.
Pop.
Oh, okay.
I can't believe you would think that.
I can't believe she thinks somebody would like. I know that confused me.
But the populists not only ran for president, the populists ran people all over the country. James Weaver of Ohio, Iowa people, that really matters. It doesn't matter. But they ran populists over state elections. They ran populists all over. But remember, third party, not in winner take all. That means it's got to take away votes from somebody. In this, it's one of the weird quirks. It's going to take away votes from Democrats. But there's a whole section of the country where there's only one party. Where's there only one party? The South's only Democratic at this time. So yeah, they took away a lot of votes in the South. Weaver did, but Cleveland still won. And Cleveland would win the election, but the populists did extraordinarily well. Jump right to the election. Yeah.
So is there ever a chance that a third party like
It's just really hard. And the two parties kind of rigged the system, so they're the ones who are always on the ballot. So it's really hard for someone else to take it. You know, there's legal issues about elections. So it's just really hard with a winner take all. We'd have to change the winner take all. There's a few things you could do to maybe, change that, but until that happens. And these states, the yellow ones, actually elected members of the House that were populist. There are many state assemblies were populist leaning. Montana was pretty populist, even though they did vote for Harrison. But Cleveland won. The populists looked good. Republicans are worried. Democrats are terrified. If something really bad happens, some catastrophe, that might be the thing to get one of the parties in. Remember, the Republicans were a third party, but it took that issue over slavery and bleeding Kansas to get the Republicans in. Could a catastrophe happen? In fact, the darker the color states here, oops. So the darker red, that's almost 50% or more were populist. Montana was just around 15%, which is still pretty high. Some areas were pretty populous in Montana. See, these states. If there would have been a Republican Party in the South, Harrison probably would have won. And then the panic. Puck magazine was known for political cartoons. I'll get that out of the way now. And this was worse. Remember the boom bust cycle, overproduction, railroads. This was one of the biggest railroad producing times in history. Think about railroads, steel, everything else. And so there's this oversupply of railroads. And there's other industry, the beginnings of the oil industry, and some more consumer goods than ever before. Beef, food. You know, the refrigeration allowed a lot more food to be produced, and cans allowed a lot more vague meat to be sold to people. Hey, once it goes into a can, what do you know is in that can? Or for that matter, any processed food. What is it? It could be pretty much anything, right? Enjoy your next chicken patty. Okay, so, and another was also over-speculation in gold. Because of the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act, people were buying up cheap silver overseas, selling it for a big profit for silver in the United States, then using that money to go get gold and cornering the gold market, thus destabilizing our entire currency. It was a racket created by how awful the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act was. And then there was a financial bubble. This is where we get the great, I love this cartoon, Flim Flam Finance. Of all the stock market banks giving loans, creating these new kinds, they call them trusts, were these kinds of bonds that people were buying made up of different stocks. Nobody knew what they were buying. People had all this paper. I'm stealing your paper. They had all this paper that they thought was worth something, an IOU, but nobody really was certain if it was worth anything. They all thought they were getting rich. That's nothing at all like what happened in 2008. Does anybody know about what a credit default swap was? Someday maybe I'll tell you, then your head will explode. I'm actually not kidding. It's unreal what happened. Credit default swap. The name alone should tell you everything you need to know. Meaning no. It's much more complex than that. Flim Flam Finance. Say that 3 times quick. Go. See? You get the Flim Flam Finance, right? So, when the bubble bursts, I think you can imagine what's going to happen. This panic will be significantly worse than 73. Significantly. And will spread to all parts of the economy. Oh. It will spread to all parts, and then, Congress, with Cleveland's support, repealed the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act. Now, the Sherman Silver Purchasing Act, you can see why, okay, let's repeal that, it's not doing any good. What are they doing with the silver? Making big piles of silver in basements. But think about it. All of a sudden now, the government was putting $4 million a month into the economy and then stopped. Silver prices tanked, deflation, it made the panic worse. Obviously, the act was not a good act, but right when they repealed it, could not have been a worse time. And this is going to lead to 1/3 of all businesses shut their doors by the end of the year. Unemployment was over 30% in the Northeast. What about on the mines? What do you think happened to Butte? 50 to 60% unemployment. Can you imagine what that would lead to? I mean, even if you still had your job, you had to be scared, just terrified. The insecurity that would lead to, the fear. And what happened to banks? Just like a roll of dominoes. More like the financial system was like a house of cards. Someone just pulled that one. All half of all banks shut their doors by 1894. Go ahead. Well, back then they would happen every 15 to 20 years. But then during the New Deal, they passed a certain number of regulations to avoid the effect of the bubbles. Almost all those regulations would be, they started repealing them in the 80s, but they all be gone by the late 90s and the 2000s. And it took them 8 years. So, if I was a gambling man, I would say,
Any day now.
no, there's got to be a bubble. There's no bubble yet. But there will be. It's happened every time. I can't imagine it wouldn't happen.
So once the bubbles start growing.
Yeah. Once the bubble starts hitting, you start burying your money in jars. Yeah.
What happens with the bubble on Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's definitely a bubble. You know, that's a commodity, and people are. It's kind of a mania, but it's really not that much money. I mean, the bubble's got to be big. You know, the real estate bubble was $100 trillion. Yeah. Credit default swaps are about only 55 trillion.
Only.
Oh, I don't make that much. So, with that, think about what happened. Within 6 months, it looked like the country was going to fall apart, and this is what everybody began to talk about. Oh, I should have. It went worldwide. The entire world was, and we're still going to have wars. Japan and China are going to fight over the Panic of 1893. Just amazing to think about what that. France and Britain almost went to war. Turkey and Russia. The fear of revolution became real. The number of anarchist assassinations exploded across Europe, like the Empress of Austria was assassinated. The Premier of France, the Finance Minister of Germany were being assassinated by anarchists, trying to trigger a revolution. I mean, it looked bad. And think about what this means. Republicans and Democrats at this time, but basically more the same. The populists have something different. This might be their opportunity. And then this guy comes. Okay, remember I mentioned the paper? People thought their paper was worth something. That's why I like this cartoon so much. So they thought an IOU was worth something. Now it's just trash being swept away by the panic. And look at everyone on the streets and a duck. And so with that, only the duck has the guts to stand up for what's right.
Yes.
Who's with me?
Yes.
Oh, duck. I like those wood ducks. They're really pretty ducks. I like ducks. Don't you like ducks? Ducks are cool. I don't mind loons either. So, and then get this. I'm going to blow your mind. There was a big zoo in Central Park, and when the walls came down, all the animals escaped. And here are animals all over Manhattan. Tigers, lions, and bears. So supposedly a guy punched out a tiger who was attacking him.
What?
Yeah, that's true. The city streets of New York were filled for 3 days with all these animals in the zoo.
What?
Huh?
There's like something sticking to the duck's head.
We're not going to go back to the duck.
Oh, he's trying to be president.
Oh, just to speak. He's open to keep yelling at the.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get to 1894. 1894. Remember the Great Railroad Strike? Well, this is what's going to happen here. Before you write down these things, the Pullman Company made railway carriages. They made the really nice passenger cars, like the first-class passenger cars. They were still making money, but you can imagine how profits dropped like a rock. Well, like a lot of companies, they forced all their workers to live in a company town. A company town meant they owned the land, they owned the buildings, and they owned the stores. So if you were going to work there, you had to pay rent to live in their town. If you go to Anaconda, there are parts of town that's still a part of the old company town. These little tiny houses, rows of them. If you've ever been around Anaconda, you know what I'm talking about. There are in other towns too. And they didn't pay their workers with money. A common practice around the United States was to pay their workers in what's called scrip. A scrip was just a little piece of paper that was good. You could only use it at what places? The company store. In fact, they would fire you if you try to buy a product from another store, but you could have found it in the company store. You get fired.
Wait, what if you
Then you couldn't have this.
Well, you could buy it, but you know it's gonna be your script, so. Yeah, they don't pay you in money or a check.
Yeah, it's in a video game that I played called Bioshock Infinite. It was also the game that I was talking about with the blocking white photos and everything, like the paint on to make like.
Oh, yeah, you did tell about that.
They also, it was big industries, and they would have all their workers, and they were like miners and stuff, and they would pay them in script.
Anybody want to guess what the Pullman Company did? They cut their wages by a third, and they did what for rents and prices in the store? Raise them. Why? They could. Have you ever heard one of the most popular songs of the 1950s, 16 Tons? I will play that for you later on when we get to the 50s, but it's about the company store and how it is to work with it. It was really popular. You've never heard 16 Tons? You gotta get out. You've been to Omaha.
I know, I'm sorry.
So, this is when the workers said we have to go on strike. Here's the Pullman factory near Chicago. Doesn't look like our vision of a factory, does it? It was made in the 1840s. It's kind of a cool building, isn't it? Yeah. It's not a factory anymore, but you know, factories now, these big, just metal box. That's cool. Obviously, architecture was a lot different then. They went on strike. And here's the thing, a couple things. First off, the governor of Illinois sympathized with the workers, which was a rarity, and did not send out the new National Guard. And in fact, they asked, why did you cut their pay? You didn't have to. They wanted more profit. Their profit was lower, so gouge the workers. It's easier to cut someone's pay if you don't know them. They're just a number. And the American Railway Union, ARU, and its leader, Eugene Victor Debs, they looked at this and they realized we have no choice. Debs decided but to join the strike, or it's going to happen to us. So what they did is they boycotted any train that carried a Pullman car. We're going to support our brother workers so it doesn't happen to us. That boycotting is called crossing the, we're not going to cross the picket line. The picket line or the line of strikers outside of the factory. So we will not do that. Yeah.
What is the
American Railway Union. One of the new unions that's forming. Debs, and this is actually one of the confrontations in a little bit, but this is going to pretty much stop railroad traffic all over the country, as workers refuse to work on a train if it had a Pullman car. But the railroads figured it out. On every train with a Pullman car, they also put a mail car carrying the mail. It is the constitutional duty to deliver the mail. And that gives the federal government the authority under the Commerce Clause, remember the interstate commerce, to do something about it. And so, so they knew exactly. And Cleveland would make this big announcement. Now, clearly the troops are going to be sent for one reason, to make the workers take the pay cut or be fired. But he's implying it's all just to deliver the mail. Uncle Grover. That's my great-great-great-uncle. Yeah. Okay. So, with the Commerce Clause, that allowed a court to give an injunction, which is court order, telling Debs and the ARU, get back to work. They refused, and troops were sent out. And outright war began in Chicago and other railroad towns. Over 300 people would be killed or wounded and forced to go back to work. And wages would be cut. Debs arrested. From now on, and we had one of the most violent labor histories in the world. Court orders, called injunctions, would be a big tool to stop strikes. We get a court order, force them to go back. Say, hey, you're violating the law. And Debs would later on go he would, after this, decide the whole system's corrupt and we have to change. He would become the leader of the Socialist Party. And the Socialist Party would become a major player in American politics for the first, well, heck, 40 years of the 20th century. He'd run for president 4 times and get millions of votes. In 1912, he did incredibly well as a socialist alternative. And the reason we're mentioning this is we really did have this incredible time of different points of view. Kind of a cool history we have here. 1920, they made these buttons on him. He got over 1 million votes for president from a jail cell. That was vote for the convict. He was put in jail because he opposed the United States entering World War I. He made a political decision to oppose that and he was jailed. We will get to that. What happens during war.
Then why was the Montans?
Member of Congress. But that's World War II. World War II is a lot different than World War I. World War II, we were attacked and they declared war on the United States. The United States declared war on them. Big difference. And so we'll come back to Debs. Debs is an interesting guy. But, oh, by the way, doesn't that look like revolution? Yeah, that kind of feel like a revolution. And then Coxey's Army. Coxey's Army started by Jacob Coxey in Ohio. He was a Democrat, kind of populist Democrat. And he came up with an idea. And soon it spread like wildfire across the country. Give the unemployed, the government should give the unemployed jobs. Give them jobs. Also, if unemployed people have money, they will spend it. That will increase demand and get the country out of the bust. Give them money. Hey, people who don't have money, when they get money, they will spend it. My guess is most of you are probably like that.
So it was started by Jacob Coxey.
Jacob Coxey, right here. And soon those followers became known as Coxey's Army. Actually, it's Coxey's Commonwealth Army. And people all over the country began to rally. And Coxey that summer, right after the Pullman strike, said we should march on Washington, D.C. And soon thousands marched on Washington, D.C. to demand a job. That should give you an idea how desperate people were. You know, it's pretty hard to just say, I'm going to D.C. for fun. No, this is desperation. You can imagine in Montana with all the unemployed miners after the Sherman Silver Act.
Yes.
I had to think about it for a second. You know, all that unemployed, like for example, Missoula, you had the miners from all this area come to Missoula, and they wanted to go to Washington, D.C., but they couldn't afford it, so they just went to Missoula. So we want to go to D.C., but I guess we'll stay here. Missoula, suffering from the panic, and this happened other places too, but just kind of funny it was here. They said, well, we don't want more people just here who don't have jobs. We already have a problem. So what did they do? The city government in Missoula did. They gave them just enough money to take the train to Butte. And then what did Butte do? Got them to Bozeman, got them to Billings, and so on. And that's how they got to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
And so they all got there, but here's the thing. And so these are actually pictures of people marching and on their way. And they camped around Washington, D.C. Now, Washington, D.C. did not look like it looks today. I mean, there are still cow pastures right in front of the Capitol. You know, these big open fields, you know, yeah. So you see like the reflecting pond and the mall. That wasn't that. It was like a swampy kind of area. And they just camped, and the House actually voted for a bill for government jobs. You can argue whether that's a good bill or not, but the House considered it. But what happened?
The Senate shot it down.
Senate stopped. A lot of people became disillusioned and had to go back home. And how did they get rid of Coxey's Army? Washington, D.C. is a territory, so the federal government makes the laws. And so literally, they did this at midnight. They passed a law, signed by President Cleveland, saying it was illegal to be on the grass. And then they immediately went out and arrested everybody camping on the grass. They put Coxey in jail and so disillusioned they went out of there. By the way, that's what we call a political prisoner. You shut them up. Huh? Yeah, almost immediately after.
Just long enough to arrest those people.
And the thing about it is that, you know, they weren't revolutionaries per se. I mean, they weren't going to overthrow the government. They were scared. And then most of them went home. But doesn't this kind of look like we have strike and the people marching on the Capitol? Wow. Don't forget Cox's Army. This will happen, something very similar, but bigger in 1932, called the Bonus Army. Worst year of depression. So we'll come back to this. These aren't new things. In your lifetime, you saw little elements of that with the Occupy Wall Street movement. It's kind of a similar kind of idea. So this is not like a new thing in American history. So it's once again, I said, it's just amazing, the parallels. But, oh, travelers going down the road to the Capitol to try to get a better life. Wizard of Oz. Really?
That's wild.
Did I blow your mind? The populists have a solution, and it looks like they're going to do good. I got to get to one thing real quick, so we're not going to. Let's get to 1896. I know I just skipped past the roof, but I'll go there. It was actually a populist.
Like the dog behind it as the background.
Yeah, isn't that cool? That just blow your mind? Oh, it's in 3D. All right. So this is a populist map of the election. And they believe there's enough people on populist platform, which more and more comes to simply mean free silver. If you believed in free silver, you believed in populism. So it says the silver dog with the golden tail. Will the tail wag the dog or the dog wag the tail? So these areas that are shaded with the lines, silver. Contested states. These states will still vote for the gold standard. Who will run the country? The tail or the dog? I like that cartoon. It's pretty cool. So, the Republicans nominated William McKinley. Of McKinley Tariff fame, senator, governor, he was at Antietam during the Civil War. He looked like a president. He had that very dignified look. He spoke in platitudes. You know what I mean when I say spoke in platitudes? Just very basic, generic, we will make the country great, we will make the country strong. He stood for, he was laissez-faire economics, gold standard, more of the same. Remember, he's a tariff. But here's the thing. McKinley was just the front man. The man behind the screen, pulling the strings, was Marcus Hanna. Marcus Hanna was the boss of the Ohio machine. And I love this one. Here's a cartoon of Hanna. Look at the dollar signs. And there was this kind of myth that Clay was like this totally, Henry Clay, remember him? Was this totally honest politician. And here's Hanna talking to McKinley. And it says, Hanna, that man Clay was an ass. It's better to be president than to be right. Get power. And he, in fact, McKinley had a reputation of being kind of adult, which is perfect for Hanna. See, the man behind the curtain, pulling the strings. I don't know what you're talking about there. Exactly. The Democrats nominated, Cleveland looked like he'd be renominated again. Uncle Grover's back! Who's this? That's Baby Ruth. Cleveland, but he would not back away from the gold standard. And so even though he had the majority of the Democratic Convention, he needed 2/3. By the way, where was the Democratic Convention at? Omaha! All right, we'll finish this tomorrow and then invade Spain. Somebody was telling me that too. Jeopardy had that. Good for you. When I was in college, Jeopardy came through and did a test for college Jeopardy. And everyone was like, me and a couple other guys said, you gotta do it, you gotta do it. And we're like, yeah, we should go down and take the test. And then we ended up doing something else. I regret that so much, not going down. I think I could have been on.
I think you could have. I think you should.
The pop culture would get me. The pop culture stuff. I'm not doing it. And every year you get older, it's like, I don't know the new stuff. After we did that, yes. Hazy.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was during times of like taxes, right?
Yeah, and but you know why you raise taxes? Think about, okay, the boom people are spending speculating. So if you raise taxes, that pulls money out of the economy, so they can't spend as much. So it keeps the boom from getting too fast, so you don't get that big.
Okay. But so if like it was a progressive tax that you were talking about, wouldn't that make it invest more in the company? Or would that just make the boom worse?
See, now, one of the things about a boom, okay, overproduction is always going to be a problem, but if you pull money out, that'll tamp down the supply. So that'll hold that down. But if you raise taxes that way, that tamps down speculation. So that's the big to keep the bubble from being too big. Because you know, you have extra money to speculate. But if you don't have extra money, you speculate. And so that's the one. The same thing happens in Keynesian economics. The same thing, Keynes came up with this. When you have that bubble, you make it harder to borrow money to speculate. It's now 35%. It wasn't 39.5. But I'll explain how it works.
Because I live in Montana, that's why. I live in I live in Montana, this is why. Literally, most of my life is and the only time I left, I was in the States of Oregon, Idaho, Washington, Montana, and going on was one time. I haven't done a like I'm still well, no, I go in there. It's like this could not have how it was in those 2000. You got underground straight.
Invasion of the who could not sleep last night? Admit it. I'll get the cry room open, and we'll just lock you in there for the weekend. And I'll get you over your tears, and there'll be no more tears. Okay, so what are you supposed to do while you watch Invasion of the Body Snatchers? To avoid getting too afraid, do what? 6 examples about showed the Cold War fears, right? And then one short idea. What's a short idea you have to do? Did they purposely try to play on this, or was it just a good idea for a movie? And I can't help it. I look at 50 stuff and it's a little campy, and I can't help. Of course, I do that with modern movies, so I can't help but to make fun of parts. That and to find continuity errors. I'm really bad at finding continuity errors. I'm finding continuity errors.
The food in movies.
Yeah. Or like they show the doctor, you know, and he had a cigarette in his mouth on one scene, and the cigarette was out, and the cigarette in the mouth and out. Yeah. But so I can't help it, but the idea that we're going to see enough units, a scary idea. It is terrifying when you really think about it.
Aliens that look like people.
More than just that. So, let's go and get started. Oh no, I got like, oh no.
Because you always.
Jack's 5'10" and weighs 140 pounds. Hey.
Miles, put the light on the cooler.
John, maybe you can tell me. You're the doctor.
Okay. Is that better? If you reduce the size of the screen, you get more detail.
So much.
What did I do? Here we go.
Miles, put the light on the cooler.
Okay, let's stop it for tomorrow.
No.
Go on, pull it down.
Yeah, just get right to this point.